Good morning. This is the New York City Board of Standards and Appeals Public Review Session for October 28th, 2019. We begin with the appeals calendar. New cases, item number 1, 2018-178, 5103 Van Dam Street. We have a request for this to be postponed. This will be postponed until like January. Special order calendar, continued hearing items. Item number 2, 33279BZ, 4320 Little Neck Parkway, Queens.
It's a request for adjournment.
Third adjournment.
Send a dismissal warning letter.
New cases, item number 3, 7500BZ, 6069 Woodhaven Boulevard, Queens.
We have proof of service of initial application and of notice of hearing to officials. Community Board recommends approval. The proposal here is to extend the term of the variance that allowed Use Group 6 offices to occupy the space and to change that the user of the Use Group 6 offices. This is a not-for-profit use, and arguably the medical offices that operated at the site previously also both are permitted as of right in the district. So my first question is, isn't the variance relinquished if this is a not-for-profit with where there's central office functions? It sounds like the way this not-for-profit works is like we've seen on many of them, where they're actually doing the work in the office. So I'm not really sure, as opposed to it's like the accountants and things like that for a bigger entity. So it seems to me the variance isn't necessary. MDI, which is the name of the organization, their website was down when I looked this up, so I'm not really sure what they are, though they obviously exist. The drawings, because the building has a gigantic sign wrapped around it that says that. The drawings indicate many more persons than 30 will occupy the site, even though the statement of fact says 30. The board has been concerned in its past history that the use would be too much for the neighborhood, so they monitored the office type that was to occupy, but the last amendment was for just plain old Use Group 6 office. So the 2010, that was the 2010 extension, a non-specific Use Group 6 office. So another way of looking at this is that the application doesn't need to be amended, just extended, right? Use Group 6, Use Group 6.
Yeah.
So, but I do have concern that maybe they're abandoning the need for the variance because it's not Use Group 6, it's Use Group 4, except as we've learned, you have an option to select either or in the case of a medical office. Or this isn't a medical office, it's really a office that does this kind of counseling. So I'm not sure really whether it's a not-for-profit doing its not-for-profit thing or it's a Use Group 6. So we need more on that. We do have a fire department letter of no objection. Anybody else?
No. I just want to say that the community board did recommend.
Speak up.
Community board did recommend a 10-year term. The one thing I found hard to understand is how the trip generation was going to be the same. If their use is from the statement of facts, it seems that the type of use would require the patients to be driven in.
They're not, apparently they don't take patients. So that's part of the problem, is you can't find out really what they are. There's a very short description, but if you look at the drawings, there's like a call center, there's things like that. So what I understand they do is everything is telephone stuff. It's not a doctor's office. It's, if it's a care provider, it's, my elderly parent needs somebody, home care services, please send somebody over, not a meeting there. That's my interpretation from the materials, but I don't know because I couldn't research it. The site was down, or there is no site, or whatever. So, but the trip generation is relevant because that's apparently what the board was concerned about in not the last amendment, but the one before, and the one before that was that in this residence district, there shouldn't be a lot of traffic coming to this place. They only have 8 parking spaces, I think. Yeah.
I do have a question about the landscaping. I looked at our previously approved roads and I don't see any landscaping in it. But based on Google Images, it sounds like the building to the east, which is residential, doesn't have like as much as landscaping or buffering from the office building as the one on the east, on the north. So this is one thing. Also, the Google image show a dumpster
Oh,
next to, I believe, the building to the north. So also that dumpster is not on the drawings.
okay.
So if they have a dumpster, they should put in the drawings.
And it needs to be enclosed.
Yeah.
I don't know how do they have a dumpster on a site with such tight parking? Means the dumpster's taking up a parking
It's
space?
taken one of the spots, I believe. If you put the address in Google,
Yeah. No, but they're supposed to have parking, not a dumpster in a parking
Yes.
space.
yes.
So if they have a dumpster, they have to keep their trash inside. They can't fill up a parking space. Okay,
Move on?
sorry, just one second. Okay.
Move on? Yep. Item number 4, 343 12BZ, 570 East 21st Street, Brooklyn.
All right. There are no notice requirements for extensions of time to complete construction, but copies of the initial application were submitted to officials, though there was no community board determination that I know of. We need a signed SOC application form, which was kind of promised in the materials, and then I don't know that we ever got it.
No, I don't look for it.
They need to provide the progress update on the tuition rate set application with the New York State Department of Education and of Financing. They said that they would have the rate determination in late October, and here it is, late October. I actually went on to the Department of Education website. You can actually find the rate sets, and I don't see it anywhere, unless it goes by a different name or something. I'd like the applicant to provide materials to show that progress is being made. I don't see any plans having been filed at DOB. I don't see progress on other fronts besides this rate-setting request. Like, why can't financing be based on rates for other special needs schools as opposed to waiting for the specific rate set? If you were to just ask me superficially, it doesn't sound like much has been done other than filling out some forms to get the rates that they can charge the students determined. So that's kind of slow progress, and if I remember correctly, it's not a short lead construction project because it's complicated, right? It's really being outfitted like a hospital. So, anyway, anybody else? Yeah.
When you go by the site, there are a lot of shipping containers, storage containers on the site that shouldn't be there. They're also in the photos if you look.
Yeah.
In the file, but they shouldn't be there.
Right, okay.
I believe they indicated in the statement of facts that the reason for the delay for the tuition rates to be set, they said the applicant various programs must be continuously refined to provide sufficient detail and support. I'm not sure what do they mean by that. What does continuously refined mean?
Yeah.
For me, it's like somebody who's like doing thing, and every time he tries to submit something change, and then he need to modify, and then he try to submit, and then some. I can't imagine that this is the way it works.
Right, and, yeah, well, I can imagine that it takes, deciding on, this is a new program, but it's not like there's nothing like it at all anywhere in the United States. I mean, there is something to go on, right? Plus, this was decided in whenever, 4 years ago, so 2015. That's a long time to continuously working on creating the program, which, by the way, they were refining in front of us for us to be able to understand how it would work. There was a lot of opposition to this project, so they had to continuously respond to opposition's, say, suspicion that it wasn't going to be what it claims it was going to be. So what I'm seeing instead is kind of volunteer, you do this in your free time sort of work. And so that's the timing that I see, because 5 years to still not know what the program is for the school tells me that this is not a full-time job of anybody, but so, you know, fair warning that we can't indefinitely extend the variance, right?
Item number 5, 2017-239BZ, 47 Doty Avenue, Staten Island. This is a amendment of a previously approved build-it-back. We'll call this first tomorrow.
Yeah, okay, and
Do you need anything on this?
so the originally, just to note that the originally approved front yard was 13 feet with a 10-foot rear yard, but this is really just to kind of legalize the as-built condition. Now it's got a 10-foot front yard and the rear yard is 12 feet. Seems like the survey was off by a foot also, or the drawing, or the building was built a little bit bigger. I don't know which one. They're also, though, and this is a fire department request, and I can't imagine why this is okay. They're also asking for waiver of the original fire resistance compliance condition for the foundation that was approved for all the build-it-back cases, and which fire department, like with the build-it-back, all of the agencies, DEP, fire department, all DOT, they had a series of sort of conditions under which they would approve these applications, pursuant to which they'd approve the applications. And the fire department's conditions were very specific: sprinklering, certain types of distance from the ground, access to windows, and fire resistance ratings. And I don't understand why they would want to have waived, or why it wasn't constructed, because this is an as-built condition pursuant to that requirement, and why it couldn't be brought up to code, to the code that the fire department set for these. So I'd like fire department to look at what the situation is, and so I don't, because it's fire issues. Yeah, okay.
All right. Sorry. Appeals calendar continued hearings. Item number 6, 2018-47A, 45 Case Avenue, Staten Island.
Okay.
The applicants.
Didn't submit anything. We only had one hearing on this in June, this
Right.
past June, and all of the other dates were postponed or adjourned, so we need to send a certified dismissal
We did.
warning letter. Oh, we did already?
We sent a
August
dismissal
14th.
warning letter, and the
Oh.
applicant is aware of it.
Okay.
He thought it was,
I'm sorry.
my conversation with him. he
Oh,
thought it
I'm
was
sorry,
dismissal.
I knew that, I'm sorry, I'm reading
Yeah.
the wrong thing. A
So-
certified dismissal warning letter went out to the owner and council August 14th with no submission, so we should just dismiss for
We're gonna
failure to
dismiss him.
prosecute. There's
The
only
applicant
been
is
one
aware of
hearing.
that.
Okay.
Item number 7, 2019-43A, 4132 Victory Boulevard, Staten Island.
Okay. This is 3 cases that, or even 4 that are identical.
you want me to call the others
So
too?
maybe we could read them all just for,
Okay. Number 8 is 2019-44A, 4128 Victory Boulevard, Staten Island. Number 9 is 2019-46A, 4124 Victory Boulevard. And number 10 is 2019-47A, 4130 Victory Boulevard.
okay, so the applicant responded to DEP comments, and there's a DEP letter of no objection. They also wrote a reasonable hardship argument, a hardship argument that I thought was reasonable in the statement of facts. And I would note that there's a condition in the DEP letter. It's essentially a conditional approval, which should be included in our resolution. Anybody else?
New cases, item number 11, 2019-172A, 10 McGuire Court, Staten Island.
We have notice of hearing to officials, but I don't find proof of service of initial application, although we do have a community board recommendation to approve. This is a common law vested rights application. As a threshold matter, we must determine whether the building was constructed pursuant to a valid permit. Usually, we rely on DOB to make such a determination. I'd like to know if there's any reason why DOB can't do that here, even in light of the age of the original construction and subsequent permit renewals, because figuring out whether it was a valid permit, I don't know how to tell that, right? The statement of facts makes reference to R3-1 zoning. What's the relevance to that, other than like a floating paragraph from another application or something like that? This is an R32 that was built under an R32, and the current is an R3X. I'm having trouble following the data presented by the applicant, and need to be walked through it. There are BIS printouts, but no explanation for what they represent. Same goes true for the electrical inspection reports and the construction invoices from the plumber and carpenter, et cetera, et cetera. I can read that as invoices for renovation work, for example, which some clearly are. So for instance, there's a 2005 invoice that says remove existing staircase. So it's very possible that all this money that they're complaining about went into renovation after the house was built and occupied for a while, which would not go to, or built and not finished, or I don't know. It's that's what it says on the contractor's scope of work in one case. This is a case of the applicant handing us a pile of stuff and making the board figure out what it all means. The applicant actually has to do that. Maybe it doesn't mean what the applicant thinks it means, or we don't know what the applicant thinks it means. And if the house were 90% complete in 1982, then what does the $331,000 in expenditures from 1998 to 2001 represent? For instance, they don't tell us what the trades are that are reflected in the names of those contractors. Certificates of occupancy for 4 other houses in the development were provided, showing completion dates of 1997, 98, and 2002. I understood that there were 7 houses in the development, so they're missing 2 COs. Or did they not obtain the COs, and what's the situation with that? Also, perhaps at DOB or on BIS, there are for those properties site plans that include the house, because maybe you look at this as one of those
Single integrated theory project.
single integrated unit development, right? So in other words, you vest when one house is built, and then that's that. You don't need to vest one house at a time. The 1999 CO shows this was a BSA and multiple CPC action. And that documents were recorded against the block and lot. That needs to be provided. Somewhere in there, there's a record of this being a planned development. In which case, I don't even know what they're doing here, because then they would go to DOB and show we vested under a plant single integrated development, like a major development that requires completion of only one foundation at the time. Also, how do we know that the house as it stands today and as shown in the current survey complies with the BSA and CPC actions in the approved plans? That's kind of what I mean. Isn't this really DOB that has to determine validity of the permit and whether the building that was built complies with that? Because maybe it doesn't even comply with the original zoning. We don't have anything on that. The photos of the house under construction that are apparently dated 1998 get closer to making this argument. But, I don't know, how do we know which house it is? They are showing maybe it's the back of the photos. So I'd like them to provide us the actual photos at the hearing so we can know it's the back of the photos, because it has a date stamp on the back. They need to explain why the lot went from being designated as a corner to an interior lot. I didn't understand that at all. And what is the easement that is referred to by the architect in the letter? The architect says it's not a corner lot anymore because an easement doesn't count. I don't know what easement. And also, why is the existing wall height not known as shown on the zoning calculation sheet for the R3X? How can you not know the height of the building? Other comments?
I had similar comments. I really would, sorry, I really would like clarification on two things that the statement of fact stated. One is that there's a difference in the bulk regulation between R32 and R3X. One is that it does not meet the rear yard requirement, and that is probably because of the whole interior and the corner lot issue. Again, I want to understand how it's switched, because I don't have the zoning regulation from that period that may also shed some light as to why that difference would be. Maybe, I don't know. The other one that to me was not clear is that it does not meet the height limits of R3X. First of all, the statement of fact, and as you mentioned, the zoning chart, none of them are very clear as to what the height limits of R3X is, and how it does not. Because when I looked at the zoning regulation, I don't think it varies that much. Now, I don't know whether the only difference is the base flood elevation. So in an R32 now, it says 21 foot above base flood elevation, or 26 foot above grade, or 35 foot building height. So that's as it stands today. I don't know what the regulation was at that time. So they need to provide that and compare that against the current R3X as it stands. And again, you picked up on the inconsistencies with the R32 and R31. There was, as I was looking at the BIS submission, it did have PAAs. So it seems like while what may have been approved at BSA and City Planning Commission did undergo post-approval amendment, and they were approved. So I think the narrative would be very helpful in clarifying those, and then and putting all the documents together to help us walk through the timeline.
They need a narrative for everything, or you can't
Yes.
just throw us stuff. Right. Anybody else?
Just on the serious loss, they say they would have to tear down the entire building and build it back. If they could just show us a sketch of the current building and show where the zoning regulations would cut into the building, so that we could see that it truly needs to be a complete tear down and rebuild. But I feel like if you look at the 3 points, substantial work by 2002, substantial money spent by 2002, I feel like the building being 90% or even 80% complete passes that threshold. So I'm more or less okay with that, provided that DOB opines that the permits are valid.
Right. Okay.
Move on?
I pieced it together as well.
I'm sorry.
I would have preferred, obviously, I would have preferred a narrative, but I did piece whatever they provided to us together. I too agree that there was substantial construction. The only question I have is whether or not there was pursuant to a valid permit.
All right. Anything else?
No, I agree that the application is not really well organized. This is one thing. The other thing is I had to read to almost the middle of the statement of facts, and I was like asking myself, is this one home or it is the entire project? So if there is an application like that the project, let's say 10 homes, and you're talking just about one of them, please, if you're writing a statement of fact, put it up there at the beginning, so I know what to focus on. This is one thing. The other thing is, yes, they cannot just claim that the building need to be demolished and rebuilt. If they can show us like where are the non-compliances and what they need to do, that would be helpful. In addition to, we need to get in touch with the DOB and understand whether the permit was valid or not.
Okay.
Move on? The zoning calendar, decision items, item number 12, 2018-25BZ, 109 Workman Avenue, Brooklyn.
Okay, on this one, we directed the applicant to submit drawings showing a minimum of 50% of the required parking, and they elected not to provide us with those drawings. So be it.
I have a statement, and I'm a little puzzled as to why the applicant was not provided with the email that we received from city planning, because it's a pretty standard practice of ours to give documents that we have received on any application, whether that's from DOT or DEP or FDNY. and goes to
I
the
just need to
applicant.
interrupt you right there. These are intergovernmental communications. We are not required to provide those communications. We did direct the applicant to the sources of historical documents, which I referred to at the hearing, the documents that indicate the, how the zoning was created, because basically it's a creation thing, and we do not share intergovernmental agency communications.
It's foilable.
And it may be foilable, and then we're not required to provide them. So there's no reason to provide them. Correct?
Item number,
I want to, I've read the City Planning Commission response several times, and I'm trying to understand how City Planning came to that conclusion, and I agree with their conclusion, and I have a difference in that assessment with the rest of my fellow board members, respectfully. I do see that, the way the...
I just want to stop. The question that was presented was an interpretive question. Let me just finish. This is not an interpretive appeal. We are being asked to reduce the number of spaces by 50%. That's the question before us, and I don't want to get into the discussion of an interpretive appeal, which this is not. The applicant
I
is
agree with
welcome.
you. All I'm saying is, please let me finish. All I'm saying is, based on what City Planning has stated, whether we agree with it or not, I read the zoning regulation in the way that City Planning has, and I think the application request is reasonable. That's all I was going to say.
Commissioner.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want to mention something about the 50%. I did read through the zoning resolution, this clause, and I haven't seen 50% in the ZR. What I saw in the ZR is requirement down to 14.
Yes.
So the requirement could be even more, but the maximum
Yes.
we can reduce to is 14.
Correct.
And the way this application is filed, it's filed pursuant to 73-44. By 73-44, our authority, our power is to reduce whatever number of parking required to just 14. If the applicant is asking us to do this, to waive entirely the parking, and he's applying, submitting this application based on 73-44, he either need to modify the zoning resolution article he's submitting this application based on, or actually go and read the zoning resolution, because for me...
Yeah, but we're not doing an interpretive appeal here,
No,
right?
I'm not saying.
Yeah, so what both Commissioner Shanda and Commissioner Shita are doing are discussing an interpretation of the zoning resolution with respect to the further waiver that brings it down to
I'm
zero.
not saying that, Chair.
Yeah, no, but so I want to stick with whether or not the 73-44 special permit allows a 14-space waiver, which it does if we determine that the demand is 14 spaces or less, right? And that's the question before us, right?
Right, and I think they have demonstrated that. That's what I'm getting at.
I think you're trying to be a little more simplistic in the look than they are, because you don't want to opine past 14.
Yes.
And if we're reducing to 14, show us the 14, and we don't want to talk any further about
Right.
what that means in the netherworld or the rest of the world, whether or not you want to, whatever you want to do afterwards, it's on you. But for us, I think you're trying to say, if we reduce to 14, we need to see 14, and
Yes.
that's it.
So, and,
No further than that.
And that wasn't provided.
yeah, I don't believe that the applicant proved that there's, a 50% reduction was appropriate, nor did they claim to prove any appropriate reduction in this case. The statute, we have a specific statute, it requires us to abide by certain parameters. There are no plans provided that we can approve, and there was no application made that would fit within the parameters of this permit.
Okay. And I just want to add, maybe that's what Commissioner Shater was getting at, but I interrupted because it felt like it was going into interpretive appeal stuff. I was never persuaded that the demand studies, the second set of demand studies that we spent an hour listening to, were accurate, because we were provided with a 36-space demand study with the initial application. So I don't even understand why that application was submitted at all, knowing that we need demand to be satisfied. And then it goes from 36 to 5. And there was a lot of discussion about sort of leaky data and, and so the applicant is assuming that 14 is the number. I don't even think 14 is the number, and if we split the difference, it's more like 20-something spaces, 21 spaces. So,
I can say I was not persuaded by their submission as to appropriate reductions.
Yeah, I want to, for me, the number is 28 so far, because I'm still like living with the previously submitted parking study, which indicated that 36 spaces are required, here DOT numbers, and even if the applicant submits something today, I wouldn't buy the 14.
I don't think they can. I think this is closed at this point.
I think in the past, we have had a lot of cases where when they did the study, they've used the DOT data, and oftentimes the DOT data was much more conservative, and we have accepted applicants providing sample cases of similar use and use that as a base for analysis. We did that with Fort Hamilton, we did that with Habermeyer, we did that with a couple of other places since I've been here. So what the applicant had done in the November one had used all its facility, including a facility that was not similar in Opera in its location, and the subsequent study deleted that, and that resulted in the reduction in the space. And also the fact that the catchment area of the two cases that were used were the similar catchment area of the subject case, and this being an exam room had a completely different flow of traffic than, and I think they explained it, and I heard the hearing, and I think what we came away, where we had the question, at least two of the commissioners had the question was, can we waive the 14 spaces of that DOB would? We did not, I don't think we challenged.
No, sorry, that is not what happened.
We can't waive the 14 spaces that DOB would require.
No,
So
wait, I didn't.
that would never be our question.
No, it did come down to that.
No, it did not come
it
down to
didn't.
that, because
Sorry.
it's out of our ability
yes.
to opine on the remaining 14 spaces, and I believe that's what the chair was trying to say, is that we can go as far as 14. And so you need to show 14, and I don't see anything wrong with that. Then what they do when they go to DOB is between them and DOB. I don't understand why they can't show us 14. Even if that means showing us plans that have a subcellar and a cellar, or a very high cellar with a high...
So you're saying they submit a plan that shows 14, go to DOB, DOB says, fine, I waive it, and they have to come back?
Okay,
We're
so
not
I
sanctioning.
think
We
that we
are
have-
not
Speaking on
sanctioning
it at
about
all. We're just
DOB.
saying
I
that
think-
No, but
show
that's
us what we're waiving.
Right,
If-
and that's what we have done in past projects, where they have submitted plans without showing the 14 spaces, and that has gone to DOB with the understanding that DOB will
If I
waive
may.
it. So, no, I'm talking, so let me please finish. And based on section 7344, it says parking spaces required by the provisions of section 36-21 or 44-21, which is similar, and where the provision does say allows for the reduction of the parking spaces if there's less than amount. So that's already factored into it.
Now you're doing an interpretive appeal.
No, I'm not.
Please
I'm
stop
reading
doing
it.
that.
I'm reading it as the text is, and that's how I believe in, based on some of the other things we have applied. So I'm little
I just
puzzled.
feel
But that's-
that this is an attempt to close a loophole, basically. And the way we're trying to do that is to assure that what we are allowed to do here, we do, and we don't do anything more than what we're allowed to do here. And I don't see anything wrong with trying to make ourselves a little more exacting about what we can and can't do, and then leave it to DOB to do the rest.
I think there's a very specific question before us, and the applicant did not provide plans or make an argument that fulfills the permit.
Right.
The special permit. I think it's a lot easier for me because the statute states what we are allowed to do. They didn't make an appropriate plans or appropriate proposal or persuade us about any specific type of reduction. I think it's simply just that.
Right. And I do want to say that, having not been persuaded by the demand study, this whole discussion about having, what I have to say, this is a little bit like no good deed goes unpunished. I was willing to say, okay, you didn't convince me about the demand, but you're putting up such a big fight, then show us 14 spaces on the site, and, whatever happens, happens. There's only so much we can do here at the BSA. We can require the 14 spaces, but we can't force DOB to do what we can't force them to do because we're not DOB, right? But if we simply said, as is more my tendency is, I don't think you've made a case for the demand, and that because the data was so faulty, the data was on one day they found 4 parking, and another one it was 20-something, and so there should be more data to support the analysis that the demand is as low as 14, and I didn't actually see that. So then I'm back with DOT analysis, and then saying being a nice guy kind of thing, splitting the difference, which gets me to 21 spaces. So 21 spaces is not a waivable number at DOB. So the assumption that's being made by the applicant that 14 is where it's at, I think is incorrect, because how can you submit studies that start at 36 and drop down to 4 or 5? I don't even understand. I don't understand that.
They were made by the same
Consultant.
very same person, very same
Right,
consultant.
because this consultant, by the way, has practiced here many times before and knows that the way you make the argument is you can say, look, if I use the DOT standard, I get this, but my practice here is something special, and so I did this really carefully done study over the course of whatever, and my data is really inarguable and clean, and with my clean data, here, I get 12 spaces or whatever it is, right? But not, I always say this, it's the applicant's argument to make, and for me, they didn't make it.
I wasn't persuaded either.
And
Right.
I just want to add 2 things very quickly. The first one is I felt, during listening to the August 13 hearing, I felt at the moment that the board indicated that we're going to put a condition on the grant stating that minimum of 14 spaces shall be provided on site. If we go with the 14 spaces, at that very moment, the applicant made a decision that he's not moving forward with this application. That's what I got. That's my feeling. Therefore, I would love that we're gonna be very careful and very specific on cases like these. When we grant something, we have to make it clear to whatever agency in the city that this is our grant. If you touch it, please let us know. That's very vital for us. The second thing, and I want to comment on the split thing. You came up with 36, now you're saying 14. Can we split it? Actually, what they did in their analysis is they came up with 4 numbers for the model split. The 4 numbers are 22, 3s, and 22. And what they did again is they took the average. Honestly, if they ignored the odd number, which is 22, and they just went with the 3 to 4, they would have come with significantly less parking spaces required, even than the 5, not the 14, not the 36, even less than the 5. But what they did is they took an average. And my say is, if, again, in the geotech structure, we do something similar. New York City Building Code calls for designing for earthquake for a ground acceleration of, let's say, 0.5. Say, sometimes when I go to a site and I believe that this site doesn't like qualify for the 5, it could be designed for less. I prepare a study, and very similar to the parking story. I prepare a study. I say, hey, you know what? The building code calls for 0.25, let's say. But I believe if another site-specific study is done, this site could qualify for less. I haven't seen this in the very first study that indicated 36. At the end, even I haven't seen a statement saying that we came up with 36. However, we believe that this is due to the exaggerated number of the conservative number of the DOT. If we can do a site-specific study, we can come up with less. I didn't see that.
No.
And even when they submitted the second study, I didn't see a convincing reasoning for why it's 3 to 4, 3 days, and then the first day was 22. For me, it was like, we get 22, no, we don't like this number. Let's switch to a 3 to 4 number, so when we take the average, or what they call it, the weighted average, is gonna be a reasonable number that we like. And I didn't buy their argument, again, during the August 13 hearing, that the error in the model split for the first day was because of the camera. Again, the camera can confuse how many numbers a guy can get in and out, but it cannot confuse whether this guy is driving a truck or a PCU or a bike. It cannot. So that's why I'm saying I'm not buying the argument that 5 is required, not even 14, because they never talked about 14, and they didn't even require them. So I believe we should move forward with this application and just
Okay,
vote on it.
thank you. Okay, let's move on.
Item number 14, 2019-41BZ, 1 West Street, Manhattan. I'm sorry, I'm sorry.
1.
I missed one. Item 13, 2018-177BZ, 2061 Ocean Parkway, Brooklyn. I apologize.
Okay. At the last hearing, which we closed, it was represented to us that the houses on either side of the subject site have 20-foot rear yards. The survey, though, was submitted, and it shows instead that the 3-story house to one side has a rear yard of approximately 16 feet, which is illegal construction, and it was a BSA 2013 grant. So actually, we should have our compliance officer investigate this. And while the other house to the other side has a rear yard of 28 feet. So the data on which I personally relied to agree that the second floor could be set at the 20-foot mark was incorrect, and I think the second floor should be set back to 25 feet. That's it.
Now, item number, anyone else? Is that it? Item number 14, 2019-41BZ, 1 West Street, Manhattan.
Okay, they provided the Landmarks Commission certificate of no effect. The cover letter says that bubbled plans were provided, but I didn't find them in the PDF I reviewed. Maybe they were provided in hard copy. Acoustical details were key to the plans as requested. Oddly, though, detail 3 doesn't describe the isolation insulation material to be installed between the sleepers. It just talks about sleepers. And there is a designation of some kind of an insulation, but it's not described. And there's also no proposed isolated ceiling in the weightlifting or treadmill areas, which we know to be major sources of noise and vibration. That would also be true for the bikes. Standard BSA notes were provided, and the operational plan was provided, a new one, with hours of 5 a.m. to 11 p.m., 7 days a week. So they really just need to quickly go in and amend the detail to label what that insulation material is, and I really think they need to show that they're going to be isolating the ceiling and the weightlifting and treadmill areas as residential above this. Anybody else?
Since they're gonna revisit the drawings, I would like to take the legend, the word legend or plan legend, just take it and put it above the table that shows the type of sound attenuation. So it says that whatever is underneath this in the drawing is legend, because the way it's written right now, it shows that the sound attenuation designation is not part of the legend, and actually it is.
Okay.
But I thank them for the way they shown how they keep the sound attenuation details to the plans.
Yeah,
It's a very
yeah.
nice way to do it, actually.
Okay.
Move on.
Yeah.
Item number 15, 2019-59BZ, 1417 Webster Avenue, the Bronx.
Okay, we were just given the community board, we were just giving the community board time to vote on this. At their October 22nd full board meeting, we didn't receive any resolution, so I'd like to
I'm
reach
sorry.
out to them.
Okay.
But I don't want to hold this up any longer. This was filed in March of 2019, and otherwise we have everything.
Item number 16, 2019-71BZ.
Yeah. 28.
Oh, sorry, 2868 Fulton Street, Brooklyn.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
Also on this one, we were just waiting for the community board's resolution. We actually weren't sure when they were meeting, but again, I don't want to hold this up any longer. It was filed in April, so.
They said they
There's
would
a-
make
in
late
October, yeah.
October, but
That was the earlier one. This one, we weren't
This one
sure.
also, this
was
one also
October.
said that it was in October.
yeah.
I'll reach out to them, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I got that. Continued here, okay, may I move on? Continued hearing items, item number 17, 2017-243BZ, 2916 Francis Lewis Boulevard, Queens.
Nothing was submitted on this, so we have to administratively adjourn. But I want to say this application has been lingering here for more than 2 years with a dismissal warning in 2018 in the application process. Applicant's counsel needs to appear to explain the status to us. We need to see progress on cleanup and landscaping. So I also don't want to put this off too long. I know we're losing the planting season, but because this has been lingering, I mean, so many back and forths on this application, it's really not good.
I
Item
would
number
just add-
18, 20, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
No, I would just
apologize.
add, Mr. Euler's, the representative of the Civic Association on the first date, listed a bunch of concerns. I'd like to know whether or not anything's been met on those.
Yeah, I assume he's going to appear. Okay.
Item number 18, 2017-309BZ, 406 Renson Avenue, Brooklyn.
So nothing was submitted on this, and we have been we've been at hearings for almost a year on this, with it on our books for almost 2 years, dealing with a property owner who is disdainful of the boards and New York City's other agencies' authority. I remind that there is a December 18th, 2016 oath stipulation and order, and we should contact oath. So at the time, Alex Berger, who's now at DOB, I don't know if he was at oath at the time or that was from DOB. Alex Berger was the one who forwarded the stipulation to us when the owner was represented by different counsel. Or counsel, I don't actually know if the owner's represented now by counsel. And we should let oath no, that the terms of the stipulation have been violated, and that the owner has not what's called diligently pursued, which is what it says in the stipulation order, the application before the BSA. The stipulation indicates oath's intentions where such violation occurs to padlock the premises, and I think we've had enough here, so we should let them do that. Anybody else?
Item number 19, 2018-56BZ, 83 Coleridge Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, another adjournment was requested. This is the fourth and final adjournment. We didn't, on the third adjournment, ask to have a letter sent out, so this will be the first time of having a letter sent out. Certified letter will go out to the owner and applicant. This application was submitted in April of 2018 and first heard exactly 1 year ago. So, first, and then heard again in June.
Item number 20, 2018-67BZ, 7406 Fifth Avenue, Brooklyn. There's an adjournment request.
And again, an adjournment was requested. This application is to legalize an existing addition and has been lingering since its initial submission in May of 2018. The applicant needs to move this along, even though it's only the first adjournment. It has a long history of just dragging.
Item number 21, 2018-141BZ, 11037 68th Drive, Queens. This application's been withdrawn. Item number 22, 2018-154BZ, 966 East 24th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. I just have to say, given the difficulty we've been having with drawing skill and clarity on these particular applications and on others, that the drawings prepared by the particular engineer of record on this particular project are very clear and informative and should be a minimum standard. They provide clear demolition plans and calculations, clear floor area plans and calculations, clear lot coverage plans and calculations. The sections through the attic roof are on the attic plan itself, so it's much easier to follow than the usual approach. The attic ceiling heights are clearly delineated with legends that match. Oddly, the legends actually match. Dimensions and notations are clear and correct, and I just have to say, finally, someone has got it right. So, in terms of responsiveness to the last hearing comments, indeed, 50% of the existing material is shown to be retained at each floor and clearly shown. Demo drawing and floor plans match with respect to these dimensions and calculations, and the standard note is included. The legend and designation for new versus existing walls have been clarified and is easy to understand. The building height was reduced to 34 feet as requested. Elevation designations have been corrected. That was like a lingering error on this. Side yard widths of both existing and proposed are clarified, and I just have to say to that engineer, bravo, you got it.
The zoning chart needs to be revised. It shows the proposed building height as 35 feet. Does not reflect the revised plans. And a little bit of cleanup in the drawing. The attic floor, one of the bedrooms, in the attic floor, one of the proposed bedrooms has this floating wall. So they're like two walls, and the interior wall has a window, the exterior wall is solid, so that needs to be clarified.
It's on the attic plan?
On the attic plan, what?
This one.
Oh, I think that's because of how you're taking the section through the sloping roof. So when you do your section cut, you hit a vertical wall, and then you hit a wall that's sloping. And an accurate representation of a section cut, the only thing that might be there, I don't know if that's really a window, but anyway, the only thing that might be missing is that the window sill continues through on the angle. But other than that, you would hit two sets of structure as you're going through
Then
the
it's
horizontal.
not consistent on the other side, that's all. That's why it got picked up.
Okay.
Move on?
Just one second.
Okay.
So that's the attic facing the rear?
Yes.
Okay.
Item number 23, 2018-193BZ, 1389 East 22nd Street, Brooklyn.
The DOB objection was corrected. Plans were revised as requested. There's a 1950 Sanborn map that was provided to establish the existing non-compliances. On the open space ratio question, so it's particularly noticeable on this application compared to the others. All of our applicants confuse percentage of lot coverage and percentage of open space, which is measured relative to the lot area, with the proper calculations for open space ratio. Open space ratio is a percentage of open space relative to floor area. And none of our applicants seem to know how to do this. I don't fault them with that. The explanation in the zoning resolution for how to do it is horrible. It assumes great comfort with ratios and all of that, which, let's just say, not everybody did that so well in the 7th grade or whenever it was we did ratios. So, it's just a terrible explanation, so I see why so many people avoid it and get it wrong. So just to use as an example here, in an R2, the open space ratio is 150. It's 150%. So for 2,000 square feet of floor area, which is the maximum floor area permitted in an R2 on a 4,000 square foot lot, 3,000 square feet of open space would be required. So it's a very small floor plate it results in, right? 1,000 square foot floor plate. Hence, people are not using up all their floor area, and that's the whole idea of an open space ratio, to force more open space, right? Alternately, as with the existing 2,812 square feet of open space, up to 1,875 square feet of floor area would be permitted. So that's how you balance it and get a kind of reasonably sized house. The proposed 1,582 square foot floor plate leaves 2,418 square feet of open space, where 3,000 square feet is the minimum required for the maximum allowable point FAR. So that's 20% than the minimum required. With 4,000 square feet of floor area, which is what is proposed, you would need to have 6,000 square feet of open space, which is obviously not possible on a 4,000 square foot lot. So when asked to tell us what the percentage of overage is, it's a huge amount of overage, not as described there, right? So the numbers on the chart and the drawings are completely inaccurate. Instead, just to make it easier for the applicant, because they do not know how to calculate open space ratio, I would suggest that they cross that part out on the calculation sheet. And they indicate the amount of open space provided and the amount of lot coverage. And then when they go to DOB can help them calculate.
And you mean that in square feet?
In square feet, yeah.
Not percentage?
Not in percentages, yeah, don't,
okay.
yeah, don't just indicate the number of, not percentage under, but the number of square feet under of required open space, if you could figure it out.
So when they do submit the maps, area maps to show the neighborhood context, oftentimes they're using the the percentage of lot area coverage and percentage of open space coverage. So there could be a mismatch if we just keep it by square footage. I think they probably should do the square footage and put a percentage, just to kind of be consistent. So when we're looking at it, we know, because putting all of that square footage number and everything
Right.
would be too difficult to read. It's better to
Yeah.
read it as a percentage. So I think we need to probably keep both, if that's possible, or...
Yeah, so that's a little different, though. The lot coverage studies are asking a different question. They're asking, what's the lot coverage of all the houses in this area, right? And how does the proposed coverage compare to all those houses
Right.
on the area, which is a much easier sort of, you
Right.
know, frankly,
Yeah.
like dumber analysis, right? But what in this zoning district, they're required, they need to have waived is the open space ratio, and they don't know how to calculate it. And so they are so in excess of the required
Right.
open space, right? They're, what is it, 150% over the required amount of open space, right?
It's just to kind
Open
of show
space
that
ratio.
from a neighborhood context point of view, they're not off the ballpark.
Right, no, but so, it's two different things, because the council uses the zoning chart to determine what the scope of the waiver is. Those lot coverage studies we use to determine the neighborhood character analysis, right? So they really have different purposes, and I agree, it's a lot easier to just show us lot coverage than it is to show us open space ratio, especially because they would need to figure out how to do the open space ratio calculation for every single house in the study area, and they can't figure out how to do it for their own house, so that's just not gonna work out. But it was actually interesting for me to go through that exercise, because you can see how powerful open space ratio is to force down the amount of floor area on the lot, so that there is a desirable area around the house. It's actually much more persuasive, sort of, or forceful than simply lot coverage. Okay.
Move on? Item number 24, 2019-7-7BZ, 3341 Country Club Road, the Bronx.
Okay. So, as a threshold matter for this special permit, the owner's authorization form has been revised to show Fordham University as what's known as the designated pledgee for the property, which I haven't ever seen. The approval has to be conditioned on the transfer of ownership to Fordham University and must automatically terminate if the transfer does not occur, because we have no authority to grant this not to a school. I am thinking that we need a restrictive covenant recorded against the property to effectuate this, and a date by which such transfer will occur, otherwise the permit automatically lapses. Some landscaping has been added to the project, but our comments at the last hearing were that the adjoining properties should have more separating them from this use than a chain link fence, which is what this is. And I don't see, so I don't see lot line landscaping. I think the applicant is relying on the landscaping on other people's property, but that's not how buffers work, right? The existing fence at the entrance is in bad shape and needs to be replaced as opposed to repaired, which is what it says on the drawings. And the driveway and parking lot areas need to be resurfaced, which looks like they really need to be repaved more than just a little blacktop. That work has to be indicated on the plans. The architect should come to the hearing so we can discuss this directly. I remember at the last hearing, it was a rather confused discussion about the parameters of our review and of the applicant's submission. It's been brought to my attention by our seeker officer that this is probably an unlisted action for seeker purposes because of the need for peer reconstruction and DEC approval. We have not had DEC input on this yet. There's a lot of assumptions being made about the peers. We need DEC to be okay with us moving forward on this, and also because we have to issue a negative declaration, so.
Yeah, my concern was that the type 2 was filed as a replacement in kind, and they're actually adding floating docks and also boat storage racks, which seems like boat storage racks may be temporary in nature, but the floating docks are a new addition, so that's where, so I've reached out to DEP to see how they deal with certain situations like this.
Okay.
I just,
Sorry?
anyone else, or?
I don't know. Yeah?
Yeah, I just want to say, because this application includes work that's actually relevant to other agencies, both city, state, and federal, I believe we should impose a condition saying that all approvals and permits from all approvals and permits required from all other city, state, and federal government agencies, including U.S. Corps of Engineers and DEC, shall be obtained before construction proceeds.
Yeah.
I just want to elaborate a little bit on the threshold question. Generally, unilateral acts or gifts are not enforceable, but in the question of a pledgee, New York State generally tries to go out of its way to make those contracts enforceable, with the exception of the matter of Kramer, where the pledgee didn't take any act. I'd submit that the act done here by putting their name on these papers would be enough to make this pledge enforceable, and therefore grant this party with standing. Although I do agree that our resolution should certainly detail that this is for the benefit of and only to be for that cause.
Right. But things happen in life, let's just say the property owner files for bankruptcy and the property is confiscated, or something like that, right? So then it wouldn't be able to go forward, or has difficulties and needs to sell this property to meet financial obligations.
Yeah. The difficulties part, if they can't unilaterally come out of a pledgee situation. They can, obviously, but if the lawsuit ensues, it is more likely that would be enforceable. And this usually happens when, in the matter of an estate, and the children don't want to, or the beneficiaries don't want to continue this pledge. But generally speaking, New York State has enforced it.
Okay, well, that's good then. So our restrictive declaration won't be needed to be enforced, right? Our restrictive covenant. Okay.
Item number 25, 2019-20BZ, 1933 East 14th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, most requested corrections were made to the drawings and submissions, and the ones that weren't, I'm just, okay. I believe the project and calculations are correct, that no lot coverage waiver under 23-142 is required. So that was something I was concerned about. They didn't increase the lot coverage. Something else?
Based on the proposed plan, the first floor is going to be raised from 3'11" to 4'1". Not much, but
No, actually, it's not going to be raised. They talked about, because they're not showing it as being raised, right? They just show that the height is different.
Right.
Right? It's because they're adding more flooring material to it.
Okay.
That was discussed at the last hearing, because
Understood
we
then.
very much wanted them to
Okay.
indicate what floors were being raised. And I don't think you would take everything out to raise it by 2 inches. You'd raise it by
right,
6.
right, okay.
Right.
Maybe, should there be a note then, just kind of clarify that?
No, because it's shown as existing joists to remain in place, right? Because the other thing, I believe it's this architect is doing, I'm not sure without checking, or in other ones also, they're increasing, or let's say, decreasing the depth of the existing non-complying side yard by adding 2 inches of material to the outside of the building. They are adding a note that says DOB to approve. The zoning regulations allow you, when it's an insulation material, to add quite a lot into the required yards. But that's a DOT thing. You could arguably put this stuff on the interior to better insulate, but.
I saw that the board, last hearing, asked for creating a separation between the PCE and the...
Oh, no, this is a different one. This is a 622 we're talking about.
This is number 25, 2019-20
Oh,
BZ.
sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yep, you're right.
Okay.
Done?
Anybody else? No?
Item number 26, 2019-49BZ, 221 North 14th Street, Brooklyn.
Yes, so this is the one where we requested a separation. So we requested a separation between the PCE and what they're called at Use Group 6A Terrace. They're showing a glass wall. I'm frankly still not understanding it. You can't access that terrace without going through the PCE, so it's obviously accessory to the PCE, and you're obviously bringing your drinks out onto the terrace or wherever it is you're doing on the terrace. I don't understand why you can't go to that space through opening to the exterior. So, you know, in other words, have an entrance from the outside of the building directly to that, and a little, whatever, a little through the window coffee bar or something like that. And that way it could be clearly viewed as separate. I see that the outdoor space is very much part of the design of the building, where they like the idea of this little ground, sort of first floor level balcony. But if they simply put that, another way of doing it is to make this terrace area part of the interior with just really big sliding doors that just open, right? You see that all the time. And so included in the PCE space, just don't have it be outdoor space, which we don't have the authority to waive, right? So it seems like an easy solution. I note that the scope of the PCE is the entire first floor and the interior portion of the second floor, less subtracting that little bit of use group 6 first floor, which is negligible. It's only 136 square feet, which makes it even less believable because it's like the size of a closet, right? I'm not even sure that that's the correct dimension. Then the other thing is that the drawings are really difficult to read. It's really hard to tell the difference between interior and exterior space. That's due to poor line weight hierarchy and no legend. So, you know, use fat lines to indicate the exterior wall of the building, and hatch walls versus windows. It's just so hard to tell where in is and out is. Okay, anybody else on this one?
Item number 27, 2019-50BZ, 116 Duane Street, Manhattan.
Okay, I believe we received another letter on this morning from the upstairs neighbor complaint. I didn't actually have a chance to read the letter, but I know that we received it. We did receive a late submission on Friday by the applicant that indicates that 24-hour noise and vibration testing was done in a second floor apartment, not the complainant's second floor apartment. And that testing was done the first week of October, as the board had requested, but that the resident who has been complaining about the noise refused access, even though the resident was present at the time of the testing. I have to say, there's only so much we can do. If they refuse access and they demand, you know, court order, we don't issue court orders here. And so, you know, and the testing, by the way, appears to show no appreciable noise or vibration differences between class times and non-class times. It's like non-discernible amounts. So if the neighbor upstairs really was serious about this, he or she would have let the testing group in, and there's only so much we can do. You want to, something else you want to?
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree on the access aspect of the story, but I did look at the report submitted, and I have two main comments on it. Number one is I haven't seen a conclusion in the report, so it lifted to us. Yeah, it gave the measurements, the tables, the nice color curves, but I haven't read a section entitled conclusion.
Oh, I thought it had a little conclusion that said the output was so negligible, way lower than discernible values, that
The reason I'm saying
Nothing.
that
Okay.
is in the report, it indicates that the measurements were taken in a closet.
Yeah,
And if this is a small wood structure, or even if it's a wood structure, the closet is not a structural element, or it's not tied to the roof. It's not contributing to the building rigidity. So when you measure vibrations in a closet, you're actually measuring the vibrations of the building itself. But if this is a structural steel or a concrete building.
no,
then-
it's a tenement building. It's
Wood
a wood
construction.
wood frame masonry exterior building.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, it's a
Okay.
frame building. It has brick walls, it has continuous support. So when comes to putting the seismograph or whatever, the analyzer, in a closet or next to a closet, I'm afraid that this is like the most rigid point of the building. Like if you have a space like this and you want to measure the vibrations, if you stand on top of that roof and you hit the roof with something and you try to feel the vibrations, if you're in the middle, you would measure something, you would feel something. But if you just go next to the wall, near the closet, this is the most rigid part of the element that you're targeting, you're not gonna feel anything. And I'm afraid that in this case, what happened is something similar to that.
So
That's why I said we should have seen some more elaboration on the methodology for the measurements, a conclusion saying that we believe we did the right thing, and our conclusion is no
Okay.
issue.
it's fair, they can do that tomorrow at the hearing, but I wanted to add that it made sense on where they placed the monitor, because they were saying the apartment we're in right now, the person there is not complaining about the vibration. So we're trying to get as close as possible to the apartment next door where there is a complaint, and they explain that the corridor isn't in the right place relative to the gym. So they put it where they could put it. Obviously, they were also limited by the fact that the resident in the apartment in which the testing occurred didn't like change their behavior. It's not like they went out to dinner that night. They stayed home, and besides it's 24 hours, right? They stayed home, they watched TV, they had conversations, all that. So obviously the testing windows were difficult for them. But I do have to give them credit. I mean, they went in, they tried to get into the subject apartment, they were refused, and luckily the other neighbor said, sure, come in, go in my closet if you think that's where you want to go, and, we're
Right.
going to have dinner.
And as you mentioned, they located this in an area that is relative to the PCE, is the most active area of the PCE, where they have the punching bag and other areas. So they were trying to capture as much of the noise impact from the use, and that was the closest space they could find. And I think the letter also indicated that they did run into the owner
Yeah.
later on, and in passing, they said, we don't have any noise complaints, everything is fine. So that was
That's
also
what they
stated.
say, so that's what they said, but what we know is they were refused access because they said they met
Right.
the owner. So basically, the guy said, I'm not letting you in without a court order or something like that, and
So the
And I
applicant,
believe we explained that it's to the benefit of the owner that they let them
Right,
in.
right.
So I don't really have that much sympathy.
Yeah.
no.
I think the applicant did everything we asked. They acted in good faith, and I don't think there's any reason for us to hold it up, besides, of course, getting a conclusion that
Right.
Commissioner Sciarra mentioned.
New cases, item number 1, 2018-91 BZ, 7880 Leonard Street, Manhattan. This case is going to be postponed for failure to properly notify.
Okay, and I wanted to preface the new cases with a statement. We had a very disturbing situation occur on an application that was submitted for this hearing with respect to the new cases, where a document was improperly modified after it was signed and sealed by the Deputy Borough Commissioner. Modifying an official document and presenting it as true constitutes a fraud that may be subject to criminal prosecution, and we have reported this to Department of Investigation. Okay, continue.
Item number 2, 2019-21 BZ, 2223 East 14th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay, we have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community Board recommends approval with 3 opposed. We have a Sanborn map, proof of legality of the existing non-complying conditions. This is a simple straight line extension of the first floor of an existing one-story house, so adequate existing building fabric is being retained, but it is a big increase in overall floor area and height to enable conversion from a one-family to a two-family. This is a street of little one-story houses. The applicant needs to make an argument to justify the height on this block. I'd like to know what is the FAR of the building minus the attic area, and I'm asking this question because of how big the enlargement is. Is the attic area under a sloping roof with structural headroom between 5 and 8 feet? Is the difference between the lower floors and the attic 20%? My math shows that a 20% increase above the request at the first and second floors would be an attic of 508 square feet, so the 763 square feet at the attic is large. Reducing it to that 20% would occur by pulling the second floor and attic level back from the 20-foot rear yard line to be more respectful of the adjoining properties. The building already benefits from a non-complying front yard, and the attic level bedroom is very large. It's just one gigantic room. So the rear yard study doesn't support applicant's statement that the adjoining rear yards have 2-story structures within the required 30-foot depth, although tax lots 11 and 12 that are diagonally opposite the site have 19-foot rear yards. Satellite imagery indicates that the reduced depth, though at those yards, is only 1 story, not 2 stories. And so that's my comment, is pull that building back on the second and attic level. Anybody else?
Move on.
Yeah.
Item number 3, 2019-75 BZ, 704 Broadway, Manhattan. This is a special permit for operation of a school.
Yes. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community Board recommends approval. We do need a certificate of no effect from LPC. Relative to the 73-19 criteria threshold, applicant needs to submit something to establish that the daycare facility is a zoning resolution section 1210 school. Submitting another site's BSA resolution is not proof of this location's compliance with 1210 definition, which is required by 7319. The resolution provided cites to, quote, the record. What is the record on this facility? It's just a really lazy application. So a space search study was provided, which includes the criteria for the search, but no chart was provided that shows the blended rents compared to suitable ground floor footprint. The statement is conclusory that the 28 other sites won't be suitable, and I'll let Commissioner Otley Brown finish up on that one. The location is within 400 feet of a district in which the use is permitted as of right. Article 47 of the Health Code which is what these daycare centers have to be built pursuant to, has limitations on the location of infant, toddler, and toddler childcare. I'd like to know if DOT and fire department have signed off on the location of classrooms in the cellar. We don't normally see infant and cellar and toddlers in the cellar. I didn't even think that's allowed. Also, stroller storage is, as we saw on another application recently, at the rear of the first floor. I'd like to understand how that works for parents, guardians dropping off. Like, do they walk to the rear, or do the teachers take the strollers. They need to provide a trash storage area with refrigerated container for perishables. The layout requires everyone to walk through what's designated as the MMZ room to get to the stair and the Lula lift. Also, the MMZ children have to go through other classrooms to access toilets. I don't know what an MMZ room is. So I don't understand how that will function if that's a separate room for different kids from the other rooms. DEP had noise and air quality and hazmat comments in July. The applicant responded to DEP and DOT on October 23rd, so there's not been much time to respond to that, or DEP to respond, or DOT. And DOT School Safety has been advised of the application, and we're waiting for a response. Other comments?
I also have concern with the, well, I wouldn't say concern, I want to get a better understanding of the circulation flow, because there is one set of staircase, internal staircase, that's just between the mezzanine and the first floor. And, but the circulation from the cellar to the first floor would be by the common staircase with the, I'm assuming, or it would be just the Lula.
No, it can't just be the Lula. No, I
well,
thought there's an interior stair.
The
no?
interior stair only connects to the mezzanine floor. I'm trying to get the measurement out there.
The mezzanine's at the back.
The mezzanine kind of wraps around, so this staircase, the staircase that's from the corridor, main corridor, only goes up. It goes up and connects to the mezzanine floor. It's the egress staircases that would be used to go to the cellar level. So, I mean, the Lulas are there, but...
No, you can't rely on Lulas. They
Lulas
break.
are not enough of, yeah. So this is the mezzanine level. Mezzanine just kind of...
And go to the cellar.
It's the egress staircase.
Oh, that doesn't work. And the building is 10-story residential building effectively, so no, can't do that. Okay. Anybody else?
You wanted me to
Yeah.
speak about it?
Please.
So, to me, I'm actually a little bit more sympathetic for this site search than others, because I think that in identifying the different things that they were looking for, one of the major things that they were looking for was a rent between $55 and $75 a square foot blended. And so they did look at sites, and in the attachment, they actually list all of the sites that they looked at, or supposedly that the realtor said were available. And they actually do talk about the rent on each of the floors. And so they show that all of the sites, the rent is just way too high.
But they don't show
There.
blended rents.
Right, but you could do the blend in your
Oh,
brain.
okay.
Basically by,
Yeah.
you know, if you look and you see like 15,000 square feet, right? And you see the total asking rent is 1.6 million a year, you figure that's about $100 a square foot.
Okay, you just did that in your head.
Well, yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I can't do that in my head. So, okay.
Yeah, so, all that to say,
Okay.
that's why I'm more
Oh,
sympathetic,
okay.
because one of the major things that they were looking for, they showed us where all of the sites were not appropriate, because the asking rents were just too high. And I believe that in this area, they're not gonna find anything
Right,
with an asking
right.
rent of $55 to $75 a square foot that involves ground floor space,
Right.
so,
Okay. Whoa. What was that?
alike.
One of those lights
Yeah.
blew.
And they also showed the floor plates for each of the floors.
And they show the floor plates.
Yeah, so I thought this was actually fine.
Okay.
And also, all the sites that they showed were available. That's key here. It wasn't like somebody just looked at a tax map and said,
Right.
this, and this, even though there were active uses and they weren't offering anything.
Okay. Thank you. Anybody else?
For the trash area, are we asking them to provide a refrigerated trash?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just a standard. It's a little piece of equipment. I don't know why everybody makes such a big deal about it. It's a little piece of equipment you buy. It squishes the stuff small and keeps it from stinking and attracting rodents.
So, in terms of child safety, this use, though this is a pocket of manufacturing, everything around it is residential districts and C16 districts. Right across the street is actually the residential and the C district. And, but the uses on both sides of the streets are similar. It's commercial, we all know this, in La Jolla it's ground floor commercial with office or residential uses. And this one has a joint work situation. So I think it's reasonable to accept that this use, had it been on the other side of the street, would have been totally fine. It's just happens to be on the wrong side.
You mean it's a commercial district? Is that what you mean, on the other side of the street?
The other side is a commercial district.
district.
Where C16 with an R, I think it's C16 district, and then there's an, no, sorry, C62. I have it written.
Start over. Across the street is a
C62.
commercial district.
C62.
So, across the street.
Yeah. So one side of Broadway is in M zone, the other side of Broadway is C60. And behind it is all residential.
Okay. Item number 5, 2019-163BZ, 678 Broadway.
Wait,
It's a PCE.
678 Broadway. 1 second. Yeah, I think
Did I
I
skip?
skipped
Oh, I'm
one.
sorry.
Prospect
I keep doing
Street.
that. Why do I keep doing that? Oh, item number 4, 2019-161 BZ, 55 Prospect Street, Brooklyn. This is a PCE.
And a legalization, it opened in April. We have proof of service of initial application to officials, notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community board recommends approval. We have DOI. I don't think we got fire department on this yet? No, okay. I'd like them to explain how the ADA access works, since there is security to get to the elevators from the main lobby. And so it looks like you have to show an ID card or something to get in. So how's that work if you're a gym member or not, you know? And where is the access point in the cellar from the elevator? How do you get from the cellar elevator egress to the gym, into the gym? They need to show the egress stairs at the cellar and where they exit to the street on the first floor. The sound attenuations plan show that there isn't much, no hung ceiling, and a 1 1/4 inch underlayment direct to the concrete slab in the cellar. There are no details or specifications for these provided. I didn't see a posting in the lobby for this hearing, which I know, you know, this is arguably in between when we issued that administrative notice. But perhaps we should wait to hear from the neighbors, since this type of circuit training has caused problems in other locations. So I feel more comfortable if we notified the building. They also didn't discuss the music in the space at all, and circuit training often is super noisy. Music or the screaming by the trainer, which we've seen has been a source of aggravation for upstairs. Anybody else?
Now, item number 5, 2019-163 BZ, 678 Broadway, Manhattan. Sorry about that.
This is also a legalization opened in June. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. Community board recommends approval. DOI, we have DOI, oh, sorry, we need DOI. The DOI on this is from a different application.
Oh, is it?
it's, the wrong DOI is in the folder. I don't know where the right DOI is.
right.
Because the right DOI for the other one is also, it was replicated, so we have two DOIs for the same location.
Okay, I'll
So
look
this
at
one's
the file.
wrong.
It's not mine, but I'll look at it.
We also still need fire department on this one. We need, they need to provide the first floor lobby plan showing access and fire egress. We do have the certificate of no effect from LPC, and the drawings include acoustical sound and sound attenuation details. This use is not a high noise or vibration type. It's actually more like a dance studio. It's known as the bar method. People work in socks. So,
Based on my site visit, there is a step from the street level, and I would like to know how this ADA accessibility will be addressed.
Yeah, hold on. I have seen in the statement of facts that my understanding is that the PCE occupies the entire cellar, the entire floor. However, in the statement of facts, it mentions.
cellar.
I
No, that's another
this is
one.
not
Second
this
floor,
one.
second floor.
Yeah, not this one, I'm sorry.
Okay.
No, that's fine. It's not
Okay.
this one. Thank you.
So on this one, 678 Broadway, did you need the posting? Was it done? I don't know.
This
you're not
one, I
saying
just said, we
possession?
have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors.
But it's a legalization now, right? You said it.
Yeah, but so the ones that fall through the cracks of our administrative notice, the idea isn't to send everything to post to a building, you know, because I don't want to slow up the ones that are obviously not noisy. People work in socks on these things, right?
Okay.
Whereas the other one, it's circuit training where they're lifting up weights and they throw them down because they have to run over to the next circuit like that. And those are the ones where we've seen them making
Okay.
really a lot of noise. Plus, they're noisy, and bar classes are not noisy.
All right.
On this one, isn't the PCE occupying the entire floor, right?
This is the second floor. It's
Of a five-story
of a five-story commercial building, so it's it's basically the entire second floor. It's a 3,700 square foot lot with a 2,860 square foot PCE on the second floor, so you do a little math, it's probably just the core that's being cut out there, core and elevator. Core.
Yeah, the reason I'm saying is the statement of facts on page 2, paragraph 3, it says that the PCE occupies a portion of the second floor, and I have a comment saying why it says a portion. It should.
Oh, because maybe what they're doing is I don't know, but they may be saying we're not including the common stairs and stuff like that because it's the common stairs for everything, maybe. Because usually we have a little lobby from the ground, and that's devoted to the PCE, right, but not in this case.
It gave me the impression that it might be other uses. If
Right.
it says a portion, it may leave.
Well, it's
the door
1,000
open.
square feet that's not PCE space. I don't know.
And one more thing, when the travel distance between two exits is cited on the statement of facts or given on the drawings, I believe it should be more appropriate if they describe it on the drawings and on the statement of facts to reflect the fact that they measured it. You know, the distance between 2 points is that straight line between the 2 points. But for a travel distance,
Yeah, it's different.
it's the length of the broken line.
Yes.
So I would like to see some sort of description on the drawings and on the statement of facts, indicating that this distance is actually measured along the path between exit 1 and exit 2.
So I think one of the reasons that's kind of abbreviated in thinking is that travel distance is required by the building code to be calculated in a certain way. So it's pursuant to a particular section in the building code that tells you how to do that. So travel distance is almost like a term of art. And so you don't really need to say, you know, as the crow flies, it's this far away, because it is the travel distance that's required by a code.
So you don't need to define the already defined term.
Yeah, exactly. And the reason, the board has for a long time required those travel distances to be shown on the drawings because of the kinds of obstructions you get from equipment. So they want to make sure with the fire department that there isn't, a Stairmaster or wherever, one of those climber things, right in the way of your egress point. Okay.
Okay, item number 6, 2019-164 BZ, 9 East 16th Street, Manhattan. This is also a physical culture establishment, grip
Yeah.
boxing.
And it's a legalization and it opened in August. This is an amusing one, that we have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. There is no record of the building lobby having been posted, and in this case, certainly must be. Community Board waived its right to consider it, and probably shouldn't have done that, given the use. We have 2 letters in support and 1 strong letter in opposition describing drinking on the street related to the PCE. There's this curious idea that they have about providing a bar that serves alcohol in the fitness studio. So during the day, they serve smoothies, and in the evening, and I read this really, really funny review online. It was in what's it called, InsideHook.com. And the reporter went for a class, and he said the class was so difficult. It was such a killer. And he's somebody who's fit, and he's like dragging himself out of the class. And he's saying the idea that a person is going to hydrate like on a Mai Tai or something was just astonishing to him. So it's not clear how many actual users of the PCE are going to the bar, active post-class users. But obviously, it's a way to hang out with your fellow PCEers. So the statement of fact says, of course, that the State Liquor Authority needs to issue a permit for that. Yes, indeed, they do. I don't know, we've never encountered this before with a gym, so some of the spas
dangerous?
have alcohol, right? A lot of the spas in Queens serve alcohol, which
But this is
actually,
almost like Spa Castle, is that?
that's what I mean. So
Spa
Spa Castle,
Castle.
many of them, actually,
Yeah.
if you go, many serve alcohol, so that, you could speak to your doctor about whether you're supposed to go into the sauna with a drink in your hand. But it's not like we've forbidden the bar, it just has to be legal. So it's really for the liquor authority to determine whether this is a good idea. But in terms of annoyance to neighbors, we do want to say that we're not granting, we're not in the business of looking at whether a bar is appropriate. What we are looking at is whether the use is annoying, right? So the write-up of that person who was totally exhausted at the end of the program says that there is also deafening electronic dance music during the workout, which obviously invigorates you, but deafening means I can hear it upstairs. And this is a residential building, so therefore we really do need to post the lobby. And it also, by the way, has an hours of open until 12 a.m., i.e. midnight, 7 days a week. Oh, my. So, and we do have DOI, we do have landmarks, certificate of no effect. We do need fire department, and I really would like fire department to, oh, you did that one?
Yeah.
Okay, I didn't
There's
see
no
it. Okay,
objection.
so fire department, we have an LNO? Okay.
No objection.
Regarding the
Wait,
letter.
just a second.
Sorry.
The drawings also include acoustical details which appear to be a box-in-a-box construction, which is a good thing. The details need to be key to the plans. It is, it is possible to create in totally acoustically isolated spaces. It's done for other purposes than gyms. So maybe that's what's working on the deafening dance music front, et cetera, but I don't
It's just the people hanging out.
Yeah. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Just regarding that opposition letter, did it say that there is already a issue with drinking from
Yes.
PCs? If, since it did not get a legalization, did not get the state liquor license approval, they cannot be serving.
Correct.
Right.
However, I do have to say there,
City
I know
ordinance.
this from my own experience on other things. If you're a member of a club, then they're not required to have a liquor license. I think that's what the thing is, because they're not charging for drinks. They're not allowed to charge. It's part of your membership, and therefore, that's a way to get around it. You know,
So they're not open to the public, it's not like a regular.
yeah, so there's probably ways for them, and I don't know if that's what they're doing here, but there's certainly ways to get around state liquor authority until you actually get the license, hence the bring your own wine restaurants, right? They don't have a liquor license, they're not allowed to
BYOB.
provide the wine on site, but they are allowed to, for instance, run around the corner for you when you give them $20 and go get a bottle, and then they can cork your bottle. So there's ways around it, so.
And they mentioned that in the statement of facts. They said we're not selling, and that's why we believe we should be fine.
Yeah.
I'm not sure neighbor impact-wise, what is the difference between selling and gifting? It's-
So right. So in connection with the PCE that's that is a nuisance, and one of the reasons for the nuisance is lots of drunken patrons falling on the street, that's our domain. But how they get to the point of falling on the street or being drunk, that isn't really our domain. That's the liquor authority. It's a little confusing. Because of course they could bring their own, and then what do you do?
Yeah.
Okay,
Move on.
yeah.
Item number 7, 2019-178BZ, 1426 East 24th Street, Brooklyn.
Okay. We have proof of service of initial application to officials and of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. What?
No.
Community Board recommends approval with 3 abstentions. With respect to the existing walls to be retained, we don't average. 50% minimum on each floor must be retained. Existing to be retained dimensions have to match between the demo drawings and the proposed. Please look at that wonderful model that we had earlier. There are dimensional errors on the plans. Correct them and verify the floor area calculations. Provide floor area calculation drawings. Again, there's that nice model on that earlier submission. On the requested FAR waiver, interestingly, the requested .99 FAR exceeds what the board has granted on this block in the past. That's quite unusual, so they're all hovering in the 80s, 88s, and low 90s, as opposed to 99. A lot coverage study is provided, but the requested waiver is for open space ratio. Again, we don't have a point of comparison unless you tell us what the lot coverage is for the proposed building. So I'm not suggesting that applicants now become experts in open space ratio, even though they need to, because they're architects and they're applying for approval from the Department of Buildings, and they need to know how to do the calculations. And I'd like to know what the support is for the 3-story incursion into the rear yard to 20 feet, including needing information of the height of the adjacent properties at the points where they may be penetrating into the required 30-foot yard. I ask for this every single time, and no one volunteers the information unless asked. And no one even, often I don't get it even after being asked, and I don't know why I have to keep asking. There are, first of all, inaccessible points in the attic that can be pulled back to the complying rear yard line, or the other option is to shift the entire attic portion back to comply because it's just a partial construction on the roof. And the second floor also needs to be pulled back by 5 feet. This is a classic case of the new house overwhelming and consuming the old house in its massiveness. However, the height seems to be in line with other buildings on the social block. Other comment?
Similar to the inconsistencies, it also, the survey doesn't seem to match the existing condition. So need to consolidate all the documents, statement of fact, zoning chart, plans, and survey.
Coordinate, not consolidate.
Yeah, sorry, coordinate.
Coordinate.
Anything else?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, there is a contradiction between the statement of facts and the floor area ratio study that's submitted. The FAR study indicates that the site has a .42 FAR, and the statement of facts, the existing, and the statement of facts, it says it's .51.
Oh. .54?
.51 statement of facts. The plan, the study, shows .42.
Okay. Okay.
Move on. Item number 8, 2019-9BZ, 468 RG Street, Staten Island.
I think we did finally get the proof of notice of hearing. So we have proof of service of initial application to officials and proof of notice of hearing to officials and neighbors. The Department of Buildings objection is defective and a new one must be obtained. Community Board recommends disapproval. I'll read their comments. They say it recommends denial of this application due to the impact the proposed construction would have on the adjoining properties by building to a 0-foot side yard, which would impact any future as-of-right residential development on this site. Didn't understand that part. Community Board 1 also believes, maybe they mean on the adjoining site. Community Board 1 also believes the reduction of the requested front yard frontage from 10 feet to 4 feet impacts the future street line development. Further, there is a substantial concern of the proposed curb cut at Targi Street would be a difficult logistical configuration, and the proposed two-car garage and parking do not appear to be feasible as proposed. In conclusion, the board resolves that this variance, if granted, will alter the essential character of the neighborhood or district, and so on. So applicant needs to respond to all those comments. The R3A, which this is in, permits 0 lot line residences, which are permitted to abut on 1 side lot line only. This proposal abuts 2 side lot lines, but it is pulled far away from the neighboring home and does resemble what was on the site prior to the building's demolition in 1995, although the Sanborn map provided is from the 1930s. They should provide a 1995 Sanborn. I'm just kind of assuming that the 1930s Sanborn map is the same as the 95 one. It may not be. That's why I made that statement. And this goes back to that question about demolition of non-compliant buildings and why you can't just rebuild them. They need to establish that the lot was owned separately and individually prior to 1961 to establish that the hardship complained of was not self-created. The test there is different from that needed to establish that the lot can be developed because it is underside, developed as of right because it's underside. So there's 2 separate tests. One is go ahead, develop it as of right, and if you have it separately and individually owned as of 2005, then you can develop on this undersized lot, right? But here, we're here for a variance, and we have to take a look at the self-created hardship question, which I did. So according to the rather confusing collection of deeds that were provided, lots 69, 70, and 73, the 73 is the subject lot, were held in common ownership at least until 1985, and maybe as late as the mid-90s. Lot 71, which is adjacent to this lot, was apportioned from lot 70, which was a larger lot, after that time and developed in 2010. So I have I think there's an issue with self-created hardship. The house appears tall for the neighborhood and no neighborhood character study was provided. They need to clarify whether this is indeed an interior lot, given its odd location and the fact that it has no rear lot line. I'm not sure how DOB would consider this, and whether I don't know whether it changes anything if it's a corner lot, but if it does, it's worth looking at. They need to show the as-of-right envelope in hatching or dash lines on the proposed plans, sections, and elevations, so we can see what the penetrations are. And those are my comments, the biggest one being the hardship question. Anybody else?
I think in terms of the neighborhood character, the applicant does need to put in more information, but...
You need to speak.
The neighborhood character issue, the applicant does need to provide a little bit more information, but based on the photos provided and the Google Street Views, the abutting building that consists of non-conforming use storefronts, it's a very wide lot and it is over 100 feet, it has over 100 feet of frontage on 2 streets. So since the zoning only permits 1 and 2 family homes, and should a conforming use development be built, the site is large enough to accommodate 2 homes with their own side yards, and I think the subject building being located along a lot line will not in any way affect the development on the abutting lot. And with regards to the location of the curb cut, given that this site only has one access from one street, that is the Tarji, the curb can and there is a parking requirement, the only place to put the curb cut is on Tarji, and the applicant has tried to locate it as far away from the intersection of Metcalf and Tarji. It's well over 50 feet away, yeah, I think the applicant has been careful in trying to place the building and not to disturb the access intersection and also the abutting residential building, which is almost not buildable. That portion of the site is not buildable at all. So I think from a neighborhood point of view, it meets it, but the applicant just needs to provide the narrative and walk us through that. And I agree with you. I was looking at the site configuration of the Sanborn map, and it seems it has changed from the 1937 since the latest one.
It looks bigger,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
They readjusted the lot
Right.
lines.
I don't have the expertise as you do of going through the deeds, so it would be helpful to clarify that.
Anybody else?
I have the same issues as you as to the owned separately apart and no change in the lot configuration.
I would like them to submit an as-of-right plan for like a building or a house. I understand that the lot is irregular and it might not be feasible, but I got the feeling that there is something, if we get over the self-created hardship thing, if we get over that, I feel like there is something intermediate between the proposed and the as-of-right built over areas. Meaning that instead of going with 10 feet front yard in the as-of-right, it could be something intermediate between the 10 feet and what is currently proposed. Same thing for the 8 feet side yard. It doesn't need to be 0 and it doesn't need to be 8 feet. It could be something intermediate. So we mitigate the impact of the variance if we grant any on the neighborhood.
Right. So rather than just seeing a site plan, we should see some interior
Yes.
plan. Okay. For the as-of-right.
Yeah, because I believe that the site is not that tiny. So the triangularity thing is not impacting it too much. Yes, there is some sort of impact, but it's not the mission impossible to design something within the site.
But it is only about 1,000 square feet.
Yeah, it's small.
And
Right.
nobody really would purchase a house that's smaller than an apartment.
Not in that area, which is predominantly homes,
Which is,
one-family homes.
which is kind of the reason why I'm a little confused by the community board's objection here. I'm not sure, I don't know, that's one of the things that I think needs to be addressed, because I'm not sure what they saw, or what they understood, or what they expected here. That being said, as said by all of you, we need to understand the hardship. It needs to be explained tomorrow.
You know, one thing that may be going on with the community board is they've gotten used to the idea of that lot being forested, basically, because it's just trees, right?
And debris.
But
And
it
debris.
is garbage. There's
Yeah,
like a
yeah.
It's not,
grocery cart thrown in there
Yeah.
and
it's not,
everything.
it's an eyesore.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but the only other thing I can think of is up until, say, 2000-something, it was owned in common with another site, and they're not expressing that in their discussion, like maybe in the minutes of their hearing or something, it's raised, who knows? I mean, you know. But we have seen this community opposition on sites that are impossible to develop, that have sat like that for all time because a roadway was carved through, and for some reason, they're still opposed to it. So,
I think development would probably be good for this
yeah,
site,
me
because,
too,
but we weren't there. I'd like to, if the applicant could explain what happened there.
okay. All right.
This concludes the public review session for October 28, 2019.